The Jurassic Coast, Chesil Beach, and now this picture postcard portion of Dorset is about to get another landmark sitting on its shores.
Welcome to Bibby Stockholm. Bibby Stockholm offers a completely unique approach to accommodating your workforce.
And not just a workforce. This 3-storey vessel will become home to around 500 adult male migrants, moored at Portland Port while they wait for their asylum claims to be processed.
We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today.
Those barges, though, are, quote, completely inadequate to house vulnerable people, say the Refugee Council. In fact, criticism has come from all quarters, including his own Conservative politicians.
There is a pattern emerging. The local MP, Richard Drax, says he wants action on small boats, but as opposed to this one very large boat being moored up in his constituency. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, says he wants action, but is opposed to a former RAF base in his Essex constituency being used as an asylum centre. The neighbouring MP, Priti Patel, agrees with him, although last year, when she was Home Secretary, she was very much in favour of a former RAF base 200 miles away from her seat in North Yorkshire, being used for exactly the same reason. Nationally, Conservative MPs want action, but locally it is a toxic issue for politicians. Well, look, what's your argument against this? Is this just NIMBYism?
No, my argument against it is Portland is an island with 14,000 people with one road on and one road off, and that's not a suitable place to put a large group of people on there in one go. It would be the same if it was 750 houses. Dorset Council just refused permission for an incinerator, partly based on the grounds of access to and from the island.
The government says they are aware of the reticence of local communities and will work with them, including through financial support.
If you were to get a huge whopping great big sum of money from central government, make it all of it easier, put that infrastructure in, what about them? Would that change your mind?
Well, they can't do the work. They can't do the work of God and put another access route off and on Portland, and that's one of the issues. Central government can do a lot of things. They can't change nature.
Yeah. And those fears are echoed by some locals. Patricia Holmes's home will stare out to the boat. Her issues aren't aesthetic, though.
Well, I'm not really happy about it. Now, these refugees that will be coming in, I presume that some of them are going to need hospitals, doctors, schooling. Well, it's just going to affect us everything. As it is, if you get on a bus, they're really packed to go to Portland. And I presume they can get off the boat or the barge, whatever. It's just going to affect the local area completely.
Can the local area sustain an extra 500 people?
I guess it depends what they're going to be doing. If they're wandering up and down, if they're using the facilities, then possibly that's going to be a drain on local resources. But these are they're not convicts, they're not criminals, they're normal people who are in a difficult situation. So I don't see that there should be a problem with it.
So you're not a fan of the boat. What is it about the boat that you've got a problem with?
Well, I don't think you should put hundreds of people on a little boat like that. It's not fair, is it?
This boat will house 500, but almost 75,000 applications for asylum were made last year. The Bibby Stockholm will arrive in the coming months. The government's problems, though, will not end there.
Well, we asked to speak to the Immigration Minister, Robert Jenrick, but the Home Office said he wasn't doing any interviews today. I'm joined now from Weymouth by Peter Roper, the town mayor of Portland, and here in the studio by immigration lawyer Jacqueline McKenzie. Let me just begin with you. Jacqueline, put aside sort of how nice or generous you should be to asylum seekers. Is there a legal objection to this?
Well, I do think we have a legal obligation to treat people seeking asylum with some humanity and some care. It's not necessarily written out or enshrined in law, but that is our responsibility. I think what's been said today about this initiative is really quite important. We're going to put people in a barge that's already been condemned by another country. What we seem to be very good at doing is picking up things that have failed elsewhere.
Right, but this is being done in
pushback.
countries like the Netherlands.
Well, it was done in the Netherlands. I mean, we had the pushback. We tried the pushback because that was trials somewhere else. That didn't work. We have this now that hasn't worked or won't work because we know in the Netherlands it didn't. So, for instance, people died on those barges. There were reports of rapes and sexual assaults on them. There was concerns about what facilities people had access to and whether they could link with their faith groups or their community peers and so forth. There were real problems. And what the Dutch government did was to discontinue it.
Right, but I mean, this is a boat with 222 bedrooms.
Yes.
How is that different to a hotel with 222 bedrooms?
Well, it's not. And I think the issue about the hotels and the cost of it is one that needs some further assessment. So, for instance, very close to where I live, there is one of those hotels. And that hotel normally charges £40 to £50 a night for people staying there. And it's usually European backpackers. All of a sudden, it's done a deal with the Home Office and it's charging £200 a night. So there's terrible inflation and terrible profiteering going on. Now, if the government was able to negotiate better deals or standard deals with these hotels, it wouldn't have this cost that it's got. But also, why are we not looking at things like the Ukrainian Homes for Refugees scheme? Why aren't we looking at improved processing of asylum claims so that those are done quicker and people can then avail themselves of their own accommodation and jobs and so forth? Why aren't we doing this properly?
Let me bring in Peter Roper. What do you object to about this?
I think that it's the wrong type of accommodation in the wrong place. Portland is a very small community, 14,000 people. There's only one road on, one road off. There's going to be an enormous strain on local services and the support services for the island, and also these 500 individuals will be too much for the local environment, not only on Portland but also Weymouth, Dorchester and South Dorset.
What makes you think 500 people using shops and services will be too much for you to cope? I mean, do you have any evidence for that? Or is it just a feeling?
Well, it's a feeling, and I think that that the local people that have just sort of commented have said that there is problems, you know, that on the strain on local services. But the thing is that our health services have been diminished greatly in the last 3 or 4 years. We have a community hospital that has had the beds taken away, and also recently the minor injuries unit has been closed down. So that is going to cause sort of problems, you know, with these individuals sort of getting the medical care that they need. It's also going to put a strain on the 2 doctors' surgeries that there are on the island. We're short of doctors, and there's no two ways about it. It will cause a strain on the on local services.
So what are you going to do?
What we're going to do? Well, the Home Office and the Port have released a press release only a couple of hours ago, and it seems that to a certain extent they're going to expect the voluntary sector to pick up where the statutory services can't.
Right, but are you going to challenge this in any way? Is there any way for you to challenge it, or have you just got to suck it up?
Well, as a town council, then, you know, there's no way we can challenge it on our own. I know that Dorset Council aren't happy; they might challenge it, and the local MP Richard Drax has said he will certainly start sort of legal proceedings. But the thing is that with so many people in the system, I think there's between 50 and 100,000 people on waiting for decisions. I would rather that the money was sort of spent on sort of safe routes for asylum seekers into this country, and also that there was that the asylum claim process itself was speeded up in some way, you know, so that, you know, we're not in the position that we are at the moment.
Yes, I mean, Jacqueline McKenzie, I mean, when you listen to those reasons, I mean, is there an alliance, do you think, sort of developing? I mean, there's going to be a temptation for some people to listen to local voices and go, well, that's NIMBYism. They just don't want them here. Is there, in fact, sort of more in common between your side of the argument and Peter Roper's side of the argument?
Well, I think a lot of the arguments that we've heard today from people in areas that are affected by this is, to me, smacks of NIMBYism. But we mustn't deny that there are real pressures on local services everywhere, but, you know, what's the reasons for those? Those aren't anything to do with 50,000 migrants crossing the Channel each year. That's to do with government, central and local government. However, there is some alliance. The Mayor just said we need more safe routes. We do. We also need better systems, like, as I said earlier on, we've got the Ukraine, you know, the homes for Ukrainians. Why isn't there a homes for Afghans or Syrians or Iraqis or Eritreans? So we can be more creative with that, and perhaps look for areas where there aren't the increased pressures on local people and local services, as they may well be in Dorset. I don't know whether that's the case or not. But also the processing, and the Mayor mentioned the processing. There's certainly a common thread there. I mean, I represent asylum seekers.
You both want this system speeded up.
The processing is woeful. And remember, we hardly, in the scheme of things in the world, we get very, very few people coming to the UK. We're a very rich country, and we really ought to do our part, but do it more effectively.
Jacqueline McKenzie, Peter Roper, thank you very much indeed.